Something I've observed not only within myself, but in others who have awoken or are going through the awakening process is a lot of times it's very difficult, especially in those early stages and still as you go through your journey, to not let people who are still asleep affect you and essentially lower your consciousness. And so in this video, I want to go over some things you can do to make it so that people who are asleep, who are just on their own journey, but have yet to awake and open their eyes to maybe some of the truths that are really out there, to really connecting to their spirit and source, how to allow yourself not to be affected and essentially dragged down energetically by people who are still asleep. That's coming up next. Now, before we jump into that, my name is Dave and this is HeartSpace if you're new to this channel, where I am creating videos every single day to help you along your heart path. Now, one thing that's really going to help you do that immediately is you can get my free course down below, which can help invite miracles and synchronicities and so much more into your life, sometimes in as little as 3 days. It's absolutely free, full-blown video course. You can access that through, I believe, the first link down below. Now again, in this video, I want to go over some of the things you can do to effectively keep your energy high, keep yourself rooted in your knowingness, even when you come in contact with people who may still be asleep or not really aware of what you have become aware of at this point in time. Because a lot of times, the big struggle is staying rooted in our awarenesses or rooted in our knowingness. And a lot of times we delay our own awakening or delay our ability to live in the consciousness level we wish to live in, not because we're not aware of it, but because we don't root ourselves and live in that place. And we get knocked back into past stories or past behaviors or past identities, a lot of times through, or allowing us through the people around us who may have different ideas and beliefs they're projecting onto you. So anyway, let's get into some of the ideas that are going to help you with this. I have 5 of them for you. So let's start in reverse order with number 5. Now, number 5 is an obvious one, but it will affect you if you don't do this, and it's having daily inner work rituals and practices that you are doing consistently, because what ends up happening if you go out and you're allowing all of this other energy to influence you, and then you're not filling up your own cup daily, is your cup is going to stay drained, or you're going to start getting conditioned again by these lower consciousness levels. And most likely, if you're like me, you were conditioned into those levels at one point in time, so it's going to be actually pretty easy for you to hook into them. But when you have those inner daily practices that you're doing consistently, you're giving your energy to those more often, which makes it more likely that you're going to be able to ground yourself and root yourself in your knowingness. These things will start popping into your head. This energy will start hitting you more often because you are more often observing this energy, connecting to this energy, etc., etc. This is why a daily meditation practice can be so valuable, or Wim Hof practice. And also think of it not just as rituals, but throughout your day, taking moments to reconnect to that which you really are. And when you're doing that, a lot of the noise dissolves, a lot of that which is not congruent doesn't even really hit you or affect you. But having that daily inner work, that daily inner practices, rituals, and things that really resonate with you is so valuable. And I found that when I maybe skip a few days, or I go on a run where I've missed even like a few days, despite having done so much of this work, I can feel the effect and how much more I'm getting hooked into other people's agendas and energy. So in my eyes, it's so crucial, and I would invite you to do the same, especially if you feel like you're kind of being just thrown around energetically. In fact, if that resonates with you, put in the comments, I am filling my energetic cup daily. This is a great thing to remind yourself of, and to understand that if it isn't filled, to really take the time to do so. It's one of the most valuable things you can do in my eyes. Remember, the outer world follows the inner. So if you're not taking time to really take care of your inner, the outer is going to suffer as well, and just everything is going to start falling apart. Now, I kind of already mentioned this, but number 4 is to fill that energetic cup throughout the day. And again, this is one of the traps a lot of people can fall into if they think, oh, I just do a morning routine or a night routine and then I'm fine. But then if you're between that morning and night routine, which is of course a lot better than not doing it and can really take you very far in this journey. But if you're only doing that and using that as a justification not to connect and really be in that energy throughout the rest of the day, again, that cup is going to dwindle. You're going to start getting hooked into things. And so remember that every moment is a holy moment. The universe doesn't look at the morning and night as more valuable than the afternoon or anything in between. Every moment is divine. Every moment is in the eternal moment of now. And so if you do a morning routine, feel good during that, clear out during that, but then pick up all this other stuff during the day or get hooked and you're emotionally unstable throughout the day, then of course, yes, doing the morning routine and having that time is going to do a lot of good. And same with the nighttime, right? But can we, and yes we can, have moments throughout the day where we just tune in? And again, this need not be difficult. I'm not saying you need to do hour-long meditations unless you're drawn to doing that, throughout the day, but you can just take a moment to take a conscious breath in, to bring attention to the moment. You can take a moment to feel maybe where there's some tension in your body and to allow it to be there. There's something called a welcoming practice where you can go, yes, you are welcome here. I am loving awareness and you are welcome here. What does that do? It detaches you from it. Now you're observing it. It's not a part of you, but you're not trying to control it or get rid of it. And so throughout the day, if you continually have these little things that can fill your cup up, I like being in nature. Sometimes I take the conscious breath. I have what I call my 10s out of 10s or my feel good now list. Some of those things take a little bit more time when I want to go do that. Some of them take 30 seconds. Maybe I'll do a very quick gratitude practice. Maybe I'll take 5 conscious breaths, or maybe I'll go off and do a 30-minute to hour-long breath work session if that's what I'm called to do in that moment. I don't have something else that I want to go do, right? So you could have many different things. It need not take long to connect to that which you really are and to really fill that cup up. So again, I would invite you to have little things that you can do, little simple things that don't take long and things that take a bit longer when you can and want and are drawn to investing a little more time and energy. But if you do that, you're really ensuring that that energetic cup is staying, and it's just another way of saying you're staying in that higher level of consciousness more often. And when you do that, you begin to live there and it becomes second nature. Instead of having to actually consciously do it all the time, you start to train yourself subconsciously to do those things. You'll find yourself taking conscious breaths automatically. You'll find yourself tuning into awareness automatically. And so that's a great habit to start getting into. So if you are getting some value out of this so far, or anything in this video has resonated with you so far, I would love it if you hit that like button. It just helps the channel to grow and get these videos out to more people and really allow them to be more in their hearts as well. Anyway, without further ado, let's move on to number 3. Now, number 3 is a big one too, and it's do the shadow work. This is something a lot of people avoid because it does require looking at pain and trauma in some cases, but understand that it's only there because it hasn't been worked through or allowed through or seen and brought into the light. We hold on to this energy. We hold on to these so-called shadows, not because that's just what happens. It's what happens when we have resistance. It's what happens when we think something shouldn't be a certain way. It's what happens when we haven't really processed it properly. But what you'll find is when you do the shadow work and you allow the emotion to be felt, or you allow it to be there without trying to judge it or control it or remove it, that it will start leaving on its own accord and it'll be released maybe through tears, maybe through some other kind of energy. But it's so important to do this because, again, a lot of times the things we want don't come into our life, or we're hooked into certain agendas, is because we're holding on to frequencies and energies that align with old stories or align with what people are saying. So it might be you're in a high energy and someone complains about something and you have energy that kind of agrees with that complaint, so to speak, right? A past story that agrees with it, and you hook into it. Now that couldn't happen unless that was within you. One of my favorite Wayne Dyer quotes was, "When you squeeze an orange, what comes out?" And he said, "What's inside?" And he said it's the same with you. When you're under pressure, when you're confronted with someone maybe trying to hook you into something, or someone complaining about something, and you're put in some kind of pressure situation, what's going to come out of you is simply what's inside. It's not coming from the ether and being created through you. It's something that you're holding on to, and that's why it's coming out. And if it's something you're holding on to and is within you, it's something, again, that there's an energetic block, there's some kind of shadow work to be done, because if you do that work, if you really work on releasing, you'll find you're less reactionary. You'll find that you're okay with someone complaining about something. You don't agree and you're not hooking yourself into it, but you don't feel the need to control it. You don't feel the need to convince them otherwise. You're just like, you know what, that's what you believe, and that's absolutely perfect. And you don't even have to say it out loud, but you don't have a reaction to it. You don't go like, one reaction like, you're absolutely right, things suck, or have the other one being like, no, you're wrong, everything's great, why can't you see that? You're just like, okay. And just let it go. You have that ability to let things go. I say it a lot, right? Water off a duck's back, or duck off a water's back, but water off a duck's back, right? And when you do the shadow work, you're way less likely to have, again, people who might be a little more asleep affect you, because when people who are asleep are talking to you or complaining to you or doing those kind of things, the only way you react is if there's something within you that kind of agrees with something they're saying, or a past story that's within you that you haven't worked through, or an energy that connects to what they're saying. If not, or if that wasn't the case, you wouldn't really react to what they're saying in any other way than acceptance or love or something similar. Now here is one of my favorite ones, and this is something my mentor told me and I learned through going through a very high level system that he put me through, and it really changed the game when it came to this. And sometimes I'm good at doing this, sometimes I'm not. It's still something I'm working on, but it's to take an empathetic approach towards those who maybe do not have the awareness as you currently have. And the way he explained this is people are at different consciousness levels, and when you understand consciousness and you understand different consciousness levels, it isn't surprising when someone who's at the level of anger reacts angrily. It should be like, well, that's how they see the world, that's what they're going through, so of course they react angrily. And you can instead take an empathetic approach and see them at the consciousness level they're at, instead of reacting negatively or thinking they should be somewhere else. That's just where they are in their journey. A great way to look at this is you wouldn't get angry at a first grader for not being in fourth grade. That's just where they're at in, when it comes to that system, right, to education. You wouldn't be like, why aren't you a fourth grader? And so if someone is very angry all the time, you don't go like, why aren't you a fourth grader? No, they're just in that stage. They might stay there forever. They might go up and down the scale. Who knows? But that's not really any of my business. It's not really any of yours either. That's their own journey. And instead take a level of understanding and empathetic approach instead of trying to control it or get angry at it, allowing it, accepting it. And what you'll find a lot of times when you approach someone like that, maybe who's close to you or someone in your family, and you really stick in that groundedness and stay there, they might actually start to shift around you, because suddenly, instead of getting upset at them for being what they're in or going through what they need to ultimately go through, you have this level of acceptance. And not acceptance in the sense of them breaking your boundaries, but acceptance in saying, hey, you're not broken, you're just at a certain level, you're in first grade consciously, let's say, and that's perfectly fine. You'll be surprised with how people will react and how people will respond when you're accepting of that, rather than saying like, you should do this, you should do that, you should be like this, you should be like that, you should feel guilty for this, etc., etc. Remember, it's not better or worse to be at any of these different levels. It's just where someone is on their journey. It's not better or worse. There's no superiority or inferiority here. And when you approach people in that way and say, it's perfectly fine that you are here, I am accepting of it, I'm not going to try and change anything, that's your journey, etc., etc., it really gives that person the space to experience what they need to experience, because they're there for a reason, without you kind of trying to control anything, whether even just overtly or inwardly, right? And when you come from that approach of that empathy, not sympathy, very different, because sympathy is in a way almost looking down on someone. A lot of people do it that way, like, oh my God, you poor soul, right? As if you're up here and they're down there, and it's like, oh, I wish you could be here, it's so much better. That's not what we're going for. Empathy is really seeing them where they are at, understanding that and allowing it. And when you take this approach, you won't get hooked in to what they're doing. You will look at them as, at whatever level they're at, as say the first grader, and instead of trying to rush them to the second grade, allowing them to be in the process they're currently in with complete acceptance, not looking down on them, not believing they need to be somewhere else. And it's a magical thing, not only for the people around you when you do that, but it's going to be really good for you, because ultimately what you give to another, you give to yourself. And if you ever judge yourself for being somewhere where you thought you should be further along, when you start doing this for others, it also helps you start doing it for yourself, although start doing it for yourself immediately, you don't need to wait. But that's something I would invite you to do, to take that empathetic approach with people, that understanding approach. Again, don't let them cross your boundaries, it's very different. But also take that same approach with yourself. Now, number one is something that I already mentioned in that last one, but I want to cover it in more detail because it's so important, especially for people I think who are more awake and are more kind of empathetic or empaths. Like that's how I am myself, and people who kind of have more of that compassion and heart. Like you're not just coming from self-serving, which is not a bad thing, by the way, because you've gone beyond that, right? You have what you need and you want to help people. But a lot of times, people who get into this work have boundary issues in the sense that they are not good at exerting their own boundaries. And what happens when you do that, the universe will always do this, and you may have noticed it in your own life, it will bring the opposite energy to teach you about boundaries. It will teach you about being able to protect your energy. And so what you'll find is if you're really bad at boundaries, there will be a ton of people, or at least someone consistently coming in, that keeps breaking your boundaries. Have you noticed that? This happened to me for a very long time. And it's going to cause you, yes, to be affected by these people. When you don't adhere to your own boundaries, or you don't even create boundaries, people will find a way. The people, again, who are really at their own energetic level, they don't think they're doing anything wrong. Again, they're at their own level. And this is what I'm saying. Be accepting of that. They can be that way, but don't let someone cross your boundaries. At least I would invite you to not allow someone to do that, right? It is not beneficial to anyone to allow yourself to be taken advantage of, or to be whatever it is your boundaries are. And again, boundaries from the heart, not kind of having a list of demands. It's a very different thing. But, actual boundaries when someone's impeding on you in one way or another. Again, I used to do this all the time, where I used to let people intimidate me all the time. I used to let people try and put fear in my heart. I used to let people just walk all over me in many different ways in my early 20s and a lot of my life before that. And when I finally really said enough, and this is not acceptable, and I stood up for myself, it completely ended. And now whenever I see kind of the signs of, I don't let anyone in my life now that even smells like they're going to try and do something like that, and lo and behold, no one has come into my life who is like that. Where I used to have people in my life like that consistently in many different ways. I remember there was once I had a certain job, and one of my co-workers was like that, and I switched to a completely different job, and lo and behold, the same kind of person, just packaged differently, was right there waiting for me. Why? Because I needed to learn the lesson of creating boundaries. And I would probably say for a lot of you watching, this might be something that you need to work on. Yes, it is your growth. It will be uncomfortable, but the rewards are great. Because again, you cannot give from an empty cup. And when you're letting people just really, the choice to allow people to really impede on your boundaries, you're never able to fill your own cup. You're never able to really get yourself in a place of being able to raise your own consciousness and really live the life you want to live. And it's going to prevent you also, for example, if you do want to help, if you want to serve, if you want to help others, from actually being able to do that. And so make sure you are setting boundaries and you are adhering to it. Don't be afraid of cutting out energy that you know intuitively is not good for you and really draws you down like an energetic anchor. And when you really truly do that and you become unapologetic about that and make that a priority, again, things will shift pretty quickly and you'll stop getting hooked into all of this crazy energy from people who are asleep. Now, one thing that's really going to help you with everything that we've gone over today is to understand that life can actually be pretty easy. But you have to understand how that works before you can really live from that place. So I would check out this video next, where I go over how to make life easy, really adhering to natural laws and universal principles. And when you're aware of these laws and you apply them, life really does start to become easier and easier. So I would check that out next.